Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Game Time Decision Podcast. It is Joe and I am back with some big news regarding the future of the Game Time Decision Podcast and a little bit about my future as well. So first off, I am extremely happy to announce that I am now a member of Guy Boston Sports, where I am a Red Sox and MLB contributor. And next up, as you can see by the new design, that this podcast is now presented by Guy Boston Sports. So pretty much what that means is this podcast will be uploaded onto the Guy Boston Sports YouTube page. It will be on GuyBostonSports.com, but it will be pretty much the same thing where I talk, share my ideas, bring on whatever guests I have on, and kind of just share my takes. So I am really excited about this, new endeavor and what I'm about to be doing. So enough of that. Let's get into the sports because I haven't had a podcast in about 10 days, and even though it is July and it's kind of a dead time, in Boston sports, there's never really a true dead period. So first off, I'm going to do something I haven't done in a while, which is talk about the Boston Red Sox. And right now, this team is an absolute disaster. Currently, as I'm speaking, the Red Sox are playing the Seattle Mariners, coming off a 4-game losing streak, which is the worst of the year, and looks like the Red Sox are going to win 4-0, top of the ninth. Obviously, we look like we're going to win because Chris Sale's pitching, and with 11 strikeouts, 3 hits, no runs, absolute savage. That's what Chris Sale is. That's what Chris Sale does. That's what we brought him here to do. You don't give up the number 1 prospect in baseball, the number 11 prospect in baseball, and 2 other highly respected prospects if you're not going to get one of, if not the best pitcher in the game. So Chris Sale is everything we could have hoped for and more. So thank God for him because he really is the ace. He is the stopper. He stopped the bleeding for the Red Sox. But still, what's going on with the Red Sox right now is very disappointing. And as a fan, it's getting to the point where I'm a little bit embarrassed to be a fan of this team. And it's crazy because most years where I've stopped watching the Red Sox and just been completely fed up with them at the end of the year, it were years where they were in last place. 2012 debacle with Bobby V. 2014, where after we traded Lester and Gomes and Lackey and let go of all of the core from 2013, the team was kind of boring. Even though Mookie Betts had just been called up, but you knew the season was over. But right now, this team is in first place, and it doesn't feel like it. And I know the Yankees and Rays are breathing down our necks, but we're still in a good spot. It's just so frustrating to watch because the offense has just been putrid. And I predicted, if you go back in older podcasts, I said my biggest concern about the Red Sox this year was the offense. But I didn't think it would be this bad because what I originally said, and I had asked this question to Jared Carrabis when we did an interview with him back with the full staff about 6-7 months ago. My biggest point was that I didn't think that Mookie Betts would repeat as an MVP caliber season. I thought he would be 20 to 25 home runs, 290 to 300, but I didn't think he'd be 30 and 100 with a 320 batting average, which I was correct about, but Mookie's still been good. Xander Bogaerts has been what I've predicted, even though right now he's been playing awful. He's had the injury, and he's been sick, so who knows what's going on with him. But Jackie Bradley has also outperformed what I thought. So if you look at each guy's individual numbers, they're about what I expect them to be, save for the RBIs. Because the players we've been getting on base, we've been hitting, the power's just been a lot less than any of us had anticipated. So it's really been the point where Dustin Pedroia is the only guy who is consistently getting on base, getting hits, driving men in with runners on base and in scoring position. So it's just really frustrating to watch. And I want to say boring baseball because as a person who is a pitcher, obviously not a good one, or an elite one to play like very advanced high school baseball into college, but I've always been a pitcher, and pitching has always been the part of the game that I've admired most. So I've always admired pitchers' duels. I've always said I love watching a crisp game, like when Chris Sale pitches, one nothing, 2-1. Last game last year that I remember, even it was a loss. It was David Price versus Madison Bumgarner. I think it was 1-0 or 2-1 at AT&T Park, but both pitchers pitched well, and it was a really good game. And I have no issue with watching good pitching, but my issue is watching bad hitting, making bleh pitching look great. This Red Sox team can hit. They're not clutch, and it really comes down to a character issue. And I would say this is the least likable team that I've watched in my 11, 12 years of being a Red Sox fan that I can remember. Because I would say my first year of watching the Red Sox religiously was 2006. I was 7 years old, but that's the year that I really got into it. 2007, obviously, I remember World Series team. But this team is kind of like a mix between the 2011 Sox and the 2012 Sox. Where in 2011, the team was absolutely unreal. Take out April and September, the first and last month of the season, and that team was by far the best team in baseball. You look at even the stats across the board. Players having career years. Adrian Gonzalez, this is going off the top of my head, but 27 home runs, 117 RBIs, 338 batting average, somewhere around there. I remember these stat lines because that's just how obsessed I was with that team. Carl Crawford was disappointing, I think 11 homers with a 255 average. Don't quote me. Jacoby Ellsbury, 32 home runs, 105 RBIs, 321 batting average, 39 steals, which I do remember because 2011 Ellsbury was my favorite player. Not in any other year, but just 2011 Ellsbury. Pedroia hit 21 home runs with a 307 average. Youkilis hit 19 or 20 home runs, and we even got 27 home runs out of the catcher position between Jason Varitek in his last year, along with Jared Saltalamacchia. So you look across the board, that team was great. Lester was good, not great. Lackey, I think that was Lackey's terrible year where he had the highest ERA, and then I think he missed 2012. But Beckett was good. Papelbon was all right. It was his final year with the Red Sox, but that team was so talented, and obviously the 7-20 September absolute collapse. 2012, the next year, getting rid of Francona, which was an absolute disgrace, which I'm very upset about, and also that was Theo's last year, which is very sad. That's really where the franchise kind of turned, but for the most part, this 2017 to get back on track, this 2017 team is just a bunch of a-holes. You look, David Price, what a fucking loser. I'm sorry. Like, get over yourself. You're extremely talented. You're making $31 million a year to pitch, and you play in Boston. Most players dream of living in a city where people care so much, where people will pay hundreds and even thousands of dollars to watch you play baseball. And you complain because they want you to give the same level of intensity and commitment back, and you can't take criticism, where Dennis Eckersley, who is probably the only saving grace currently of the Red Sox broadcast on NESN, because Dave O'Brien sucks. I'm not sure if you heard this on Felger and Maz. They've been doing this over the past year or so since O'Brien's been the main commentator for NESN, how he has a little whistle when he talks, like Pomeranz when he talks. You can go find that online, but he's becoming insufferable to listen to, and I feel bad because, replacing Don Orsillo is a very tough task, and no one expects him to be better than Orsillo, but I liked O'Brien. He seemed like a nice guy, but he's becoming insufferable. And then Jerry Remy obviously has a battle with cancer right now. Sending all my best wishes to him. So he really is, and he's always been great as long as I've been around watching the Red Sox. Jerry Remy's been there, but Eck is tremendous in the booth. I love his style. I love his own lingo where he has his own baseball terminology, and he actually knows what's going on in the game, and he's not afraid to say anything. Mike Timlin, another former Red Sox reliever, has been filling in. And again, another guy, seems like a nice guy, but he's like, oh, well, Drew Pomeranz, he's has 157 pitches in the first 3 innings. Oh, well, he's a strong young guy. He can take it. And like he was saying, Pomeranz, like the rest of the rotation, are a bunch of young, strong guys, and they can throw a lot of pitches. Do you not realize how fragile Drew Pomeranz is? I don't think he's ever thrown more than 170 innings. The guy freaking throws 104 pitches through 5 innings. I think that was the actual number, right around there. I mean, the guy is not efficient. He nibbles. I almost call it like the Japanese pitcher, where, if you guys remember, Daisuke Matsuzaka was a notorious nibbler. He'd be 110 pitches through 5 innings because, little thing that I heard, in Japanese baseball, like, the 3-2 count is the ultimate duel. Like, pitchers will actually waste pitches to get to a 3-2 count because that's kind of where the best of the hitter meets the best of the pitcher, and that's like the ultimate pinnacle of the game. So that's a little baseball tidbit for you. But talking about Drew Pomeranz, I can't watch him pitch. Like, I dread watching him pitch. Many of you have heard he's been my least favorite move Dombrowski's made. He's an average pitcher, and the Red Sox gave up a blue-chip prospect for him. So even if Anderson Espinoza doesn't pan out as a prospect, I still would not give Dombrowski a win for this trade, just because when you have a top 15 prospect, as we've seen, you need to get a real difference maker in return. And Pomeranz is no better than a 3 or 4 starter. So that's enough of him. I can't watch him pitch. So looks like the Red Sox are wrapping up another W as we speak, unless anything goes awry. So that's good. At least Chris Sale pitched well. Thank God for him. And it's just, it's so frustrating to watch. And it's getting to the point where I don't even enjoy watching the Red Sox play. And then one last thing about baseball before we move on to next segment is that I'm a huge baseball fan. Baseball, I would say, is my first love. 6, 7 years old, I start watching baseball religiously, and I've never had an issue. I could just watch the Red Sox play, and I've always been into it. Right now, I don't know if it's pace of play. I don't know if it's just this team is very unlikable. But unless Chris Sale is pitching, I have a very tough time watching the Sox. And as it currently stands, like, if I'm home and the Red Sox are on, I'll have them on in the background, but excuse me, I'm either playing a game or writing something or doing something, getting ready for the next day, or just doing whatever. But I just can't sit down and watch the Red Sox play unless Chris Sale's pitching because it's just so boring. And the Red Sox currently play the longest games in the MLB, and I think that's a product of recently having a lot of extra innings games, but just the pace that David Price and Drew Pomeranz, just watching them go, it's like, oh my God, you're going to take 30 seconds in between pitches, get the ball back, wind up, and just hum it in. I mean, it's ridiculous to watch. So I'm really frustrated watching this team right now. So that's what I have in terms of pace of play. Next up, Red Sox acquire Eduardo Nunez for 2 minor leaguers that I've never heard of. So that's good because I study up on the system. I know the top 10 guys. I mean, I probably could have named the top 20 guys before Dombrowski got in, but he completely gutted the system. But that's a different conversation for a different day. But right now, Nunez, he's hitting over 300. He's, from what I hear, I haven't obviously had a lot of time to watch him play, but he was an all-star last year. Seems like just a guy who can get hits and isn't a complete black hole at the end of the order. He doesn't provide the power that a guy like Todd Frazier would have given, but you know what? For the return, it wasn't a bad move. He's also very cheap, so it doesn't threaten the Red Sox going over the luxury tax. So that's another thing that I'm sure Dombrowski and John Henry considered when bringing him in. So that I think it's a solid move. It's not gonna move the needle. It's not gonna push them over the top, but at least it gives them another capable hitter in the lineup. And last of all, Rafael Devers hit his first home run in his first major league hit. I'm really excited about this kid, and this is why you don't deal prospects. You see all these guys saying, "Oh, why would you want to? Why do you want to keep all these prospects, these prospects, these prospects?" You look at the Red Sox. The majority of their lineup is prospects. Mookie Betts. A lot of people wanted to trade him for Cole Hamels. He wasn't even as highly touted. He was never a top 10, top 15 prospect. I think hit at the end when he was really shooting up through the system in Double-A. I think he finally peaked in the 40s in Baseball America's list, but he was never really elite in terms of rankings. But he was the prospect. Jackie Bradley Jr. was a top prospect. Xander Bogaerts was a top prospect. Dustin Pedroia came through our system. And you look around the league, Aaron Judge, Gary Sanchez, Clint Frazier coming up. The Yankees are building that way. So I don't think that dealing prospects is always the best move. I mean, if you have a loaded system like the Yankees currently do and like the Red Sox did, you can pull off a move for Chris Sale. But all these other moves that Dombrowski's made, like Pomeranz, like Kimbrel, who I'll get to in an article coming up, so I'm going to tease that. You can hear my thoughts on the Kimbrel trade because I know a lot of people are fans of that. I'll get back to that later. But when you make multiple trades that involve multiple top 100 prospects, that's getting to a point where you've kind of given up your leverage and hindered your ability to make key moves. So I wouldn't, as we currently stand on July 26th, I would put my confidence index at about a 50-50 chance the Red Sox make the playoffs, which I know is crazy, but this team, I would not rule out an epic collapse, which might be unfolding in front of our eyes. So that's my thoughts on the Sox. Keep up with my articles. I've currently written 2 so far in the past 4 days that I've been a part of Guy Boston Sports. So I'll be looking at update articles 2-3 times a week, depending on how much I'm working. Also got a job at Target where I save lives. So if you want to hear about that, I'll leave that to the end of the podcast. That's not sports related, but kind of just my life related. So, yep, I did save 2 lives yesterday at work. But that you'll hear about that later in the show. So, next up, talk about the NBA, the sport which has kind of consumed all of my sports attention for the past 3-4 months since the Patriots season has been over, so 5 months or whatever. Kyrie Irving, just as you think the NBA is slowing down, free agency's over, all the moves are over, summer league's over, the draft passed, Boston made the trade with Philly, swapping the first and third picks, Chris Paul gets traded to the Rockets, Gordon Hayward signs with the Celtics, Paul George goes to Oklahoma City, all these big moves that people are on the move, and I mean, probably the last true move that we all expected before this Kyrie Irving news broke was, Melo will probably get traded either to the Cavs or the Rockets, but none of us were really expecting a shakeup like this, where Kyrie Irving, a man who I believe to be a top 15 player in the National Basketball Association, is requesting a trade to leave the man who I believe is arguably the greatest player to ever live and no worse than the second greatest player to ever live. So, in my humble opinion. So, you look at this, and you're going, wow. And Zach Lowe. I don't know why I said Mark Lowe. I was thinking Mark Stein, maybe. Zach Lowe reported that Danny Ainge made the obligatory call just to be kept in the loop, as you would with any other all-star and all-NBA caliber talent. But this has me thinking, if you have the chance to trade Isaiah Thomas for Kyrie Irving, or in a package for Kyrie Irving, you say yes 100 times out of 100. Maybe 200 times out of 100. Do you not realize how much better Kyrie Irving is than Isaiah Thomas? Now, I know you point to the stats, and I'll give this to you. Last year, from a pure statistical standpoint, Isaiah Thomas, on paper, looked better than Kyrie Irving. 28.9 points a game to 5.9 assists, more than Irving had. Irving did shoot a slightly better percentage, both from 3 and from the field, but Isaiah had a higher offensive and efficiency and defensive efficiency. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't know how they calculate that, and you probably don't know how they're calculating that. If you can tell me how to calculate defensive efficiency and all those metrics, then fine. I will say, all right, you're smarter than I am. But 90% of you, 99% of you, can't tell me what defensive efficiency is. So, just using my eyeball test, Kyrie Irving is a far superior player to Isaiah Thomas. He's younger, he's a better shooter, and he fits in the modern NBA, or just in the NBA in general, but just by the fact that he's 6'3". And I know you want to say heart over height. Isaiah Thomas is 5'7". I've met Isaiah Thomas, humble brag, last year. So currently, as we speak, in shoes, I'm about 5'11", without shoes, 5'10 and a half. Last year, I was about maybe 5'9", 5'9 and a half. I grew about an inch, 16, 17, 18, in the past year or so. Isaiah Thomas, you can see in a picture that I posted with him, was about 2 inches shorter than I was. So he's 5'8 at most. So it's listed 5'9". He's somewhere between 5'7 and 5'8. At 5'8", 5'7", whatever, 180 pounds, 175 pounds, whatever he is, you cannot withstand the beating that it takes because his style of play is so aggressive. And he's been able to stay healthy up until the last playoff series this year, playing 79 games this year, 76 games, played all 82 last year. But there comes a point where he just can't take it. And he's going to be 29 next year. So it's just, I don't see how you can win a championship with Isaiah Thomas as a focal point. And this is my argument. And it's hard to go over Twitter because you have 140 characters. So listen to this. I'm going to share my argument as to why you can't win a championship with Isaiah Thomas as one of your best players. And here it is. Isaiah Thomas was elite on offense last year. But his usage rate was up there with James Harden and Russell Westbrook. And he was third in scoring. He was dynamite. He was terrific last year. He was everything you could have hoped. But we all knew the Celtics didn't have a chance. The Celtics played in a weak Eastern Conference. They took advantage of that. They took advantage of Toronto having injuries with Kyle Lowry being out a lot at the end of the year. They took advantage of the Cavs coasting at the end of the year. And they were able to be one of and this is no offense to them, but probably one of the worst number 1 seeds in NBA history. That's no knock against them. They weren't expected to be a 1 seed. And I think they got a lot of hate in the playoffs, especially going down 0-2 to the Bulls for being a 1 seed, where if they were the 3rd seed, then people would say, all right, that's fine. You're down 0-2, but I think it put a lot of unwarranted hate on them, which I can understand because they were being hyped up, especially by Celtics fans, as a true number 1 seed. But all that aside, when you look at Isaiah Thomas, he's a guy who will always give you max effort, and he's an all-star. I'm not saying he's not an all-star. I'm saying he's somewhere between the 25th to 30th best player in the league. That's when you're in the top, because I think there's 450 basketball players in the NBA currently. So if you're in the top 8% of all NBA players, I'm putting you in elite company. Just because I think you're top 30 instead of top 15, I'm getting a lot of flack, but you can't win a championship. And now back to my point. You can't win a championship with him is because he needs the ball so much to be at his best. For Isaiah Thomas to produce at the elite level that we saw last year, he needs to have the ball in his hands because he's obviously only good on offense. Defense, yes, I know it's a crutch that a lot of people bring up to berate him, and obviously he's a very bad defender. And I'm less worried about his defensive numbers in the regular season than I am in the playoffs, because if you saw in the Washington series, Bradley Beal just straight up abused him. Bradley Beal at 6'4" was able to abuse a 5'7" Isaiah Thomas, and there's no way around it. So obviously defense matters, but even if he was an average defender, I would still be scared about having a ball dominant point guard because he needs to have the ball so much that he doesn't let other players shine. And it's not even about his facilitating, which I do believe is below average for a point guard, especially a championship level point guard. But even without that, he needs the ball so much to really make the most of what he is because he really doesn't have any other facet to his game, that it hurts the rest of the team. And it's fine last year when you have no other alpha scorer, when you're playing with Al Horford, who, as I said many podcasts, probably one of the most underrated players in basketball, who does every little thing, who spaces the floor, gives you perfect passes, and does everything you could want of a modern big man. So yes, last year the Celtics were in a perfect situation where they weren't a championship team, but they were able to exploit the weak Eastern Conference. They were able to exploit other teams flat out not trying. I'm talking to you, the Cavs. And injuries. So he is good enough to be a lead guy to take you to the Eastern Conference Finals or be a top 5 team in the NBA with the perfect situation around him. But taking that next step, you need multiple stars. And when you have multiple stars, you need to use the multiple stars to your advantage. And I would even bring this up with guys like Russell Westbrook. And Russell Westbrook is not in the same stratosphere as Isaiah Thomas. That's just a fact. But even he will have a hard time winning a championship because he needs the ball in his hands so many times. And the NBA is now a league where so many stars are clustering that you need to have multiple stars. You need to have probably 3 stars to compete with the Warriors and the Cavaliers. And now you're looking at the Rockets, and the Spurs are always going to be good. So you need to have a cohesive team. And if you look at the 2007-8 Celtics with Pierce, KG, and Ray, none of them averaged over 20 points a game. But you know what was great about them? Ray wasn't a great defender, but he was a solid defender. Ray didn't need to have the ball in his hands. Ray was the best off-ball scorer because he didn't have the ball in his hands. He just caught it and shot the ball better than anyone who ever lived. So that's why, even though Ray was mainly a single-faceted player, he didn't hinder other teammates. Pierce could score at all levels. He could drive, he could shoot, he could get to the line, mid-range game, everything. And he was a solid defender. KG, Defensive Player of the Year, could do everything on the court. So he didn't need to have the ball in his hands at all times. Isaiah Thomas's skill set is to have the ball in his hands at all times. And if you're Russell Westbrook, the reigning MVP, it's hard to win a championship when you play like that. But to be a 5'7" point guard, no matter how talented you are, you just can't win a championship. So that's why I would consider moving on from Isaiah Thomas for Kyrie Irving, and obviously I would do that in a second. So now that we're done with my Isaiah opinion, which I think is a lot less egregious than a lot of you who follow me on Twitter would believe. I think a lot of you, unless you're like some of the people I say on Twitter, I'm not going to name names, but if you're listening to this, you probably know who you are, who pretty much just suck off Isaiah and say he's the greatest player. Can say, all right, I can understand where he's coming from. Because I'm not just saying this about Isaiah, I'm saying it about Russell Westbrook. So if I can say you're gonna have a hard time winning a championship with Russell Westbrook because he's ball dominant, you're probably gonna have a hard time winning a championship with Isaiah Thomas as your lead guy. So next up, to some trade proposals that I would consider for Kyrie Irving. If you can get I think it was Jason McIntyre, whatever his name was, Fox Sports, put out a trade. Isaiah Crowder, the Dancing French Bear, also known as Gershon Yabusele, and the Nets pick next year for Kyrie Irving. No, I'm not giving up the Nets pick for Kyrie Irving unless it's like straight up. Because you think about it, we were reluctant to give that pick up for Paul George, Jimmy Butler, who I believe that Kyrie Irving is in the same class talent-wise, but I think especially for the Celtics system, that those guys, in terms of positionless basketball, fit in better. And I'd like to conserve my assets for Anthony Davis down the road. But if you're telling me, and I've seen some, no one, like, no insider, just like people floating around ideas. I saw Isaiah Crowder and Terry Rozier. You tell me I can get Kyrie Irving for Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, and Terry Rozier. I will take my beautiful Subaru Impreza. I will, any time of the day, midnight, 2 in the morning, 5 in the morning, 6 in the afternoon, 6 in the evening, anytime. I will pick each of them up. I will drive them. I will carry their luggage. I will go to Cleveland with them, send them away, cook them, take them out for dinner. They have millions of dollars. I work at Target. I'm a minimum wage earner. Love Target, but that's what I am. I'm a minimum wage earning college student. I will drive them. I will pay for their dinner. I'll buy them whatever they want to get Kyrie Irving. into Boston for that trade. Cleveland would never do that. But are you kidding me? Honestly, the player I'd probably be most upset about losing in that trade would be Terry Rozier, because I'm pretty high on him. Crowder, I like Crowder more than a lot of Celtics fans you'll see on Twitter. They really just abuse the guy. He's a good player on a great contract, but he's not a great player. But he's still a solid guy. But we have Marcus Morris, and we have obviously Gordon Hayward. So Crowder isn't as needed, especially considering Morris's contract is arguably better than Crowder's. And I think they're pretty equal in terms of their play. And then you're going from Isaiah to Irving, which is a huge jump in my opinion. Because I have Isaiah currently slotted as, I think, the 27th best player, and I have Irving around 13th or 14th. So when you look at the NBA in terms of star clusters, the closer you get to the top, the greater the disparity is. So, another tangent, NBA is broken up into groups of stars. So, I have the top one, which is LeBron. LeBron is in a class of his own right now, best player in the world. And then I have your second cluster, where KD is at the very top of this, but I think you have the next 6 guys you can put in any order, and that's, Kevin Durant should be for the most part too, but you have Kevin Durant, Kyrie on the brain. Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Steph Curry, Anthony Davis. That's your next group. And then, including LeBron, those 7 guys, the top 7, unless you're a hot take artist, which I am, but I can't even go that far. Unless you're speaking out of your ass, don't watch basketball, or just want to be give a really outside the box take that you really in your heart don't believe. That's your top 7. And then you have your next group of however many players, which is Boogie, Paul George, Jimmy Butler, Kyrie Irving, Giannis. Trying to think of other guys in that group. Karl Anthony Towns. Those are your next group, and those are guys who are probably can be the best player on a championship team if they're on a team like the Celtics, where you have 2 guys like that. But if they're by far the best player on your team, you're not winning a championship, but you're good. And then you have your next tier where Gordon Hayward is kind of on the bubble between the next group and this group. And then the next tier, which is 15 to 25, and you're looking at your Al Horfords, your Paul Millsaps, Kevin Loves, Isaiah might be in there, Damian Lillard borderline. Oh, I forgot to mention Chris Paul into the second tier. My bad. Chris Paul's in the second tier. But if you're going down the list, those guys, Kristaps Porzingis right now is in the tier 3. He will be tier 1, obviously, in the next 2 to 3 years, but that's the way it's kind of broken down into stars. So, Isaiah Thomas is currently at the end of my tier 3. So, that's kind of how I look at it. And so, basically, the gist of what I'm trying to say is you can get Kyrie Irving and give up a package that doesn't include any Nets asset, and by Nets asset I mean Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, the 2018 Nets pick, and the Lakers pick, which we got from dealing the number 1 pick. Those are what I call Brooklyn assets. 3 of them obviously from Brooklyn, and then another one was a byproduct of a Brooklyn trade. So, that's that. And last up on this will be a little Patriots talk. My school, Boston University, did a study about CTE and how 99% of the players, former players whose brains were donated to study, had signs of CTE. I'm not too educated on the topic, so I really don't want to get into it. Obviously, that number's alarming, but you have to take it for what it's worth, because the brains studied were donated by the families of players who had many concussions and believed to have had CTE. So I would pretty much say 99% of I would, if I were to extrapolate this, or whatever, I took stats, I got a 1 on the test. But if I were to kind of make a statement about this, based on the research of the players studied, 99% of players who died and believed, and their families believed they had CTE, had it. I don't think that this is indicative about all NFL players, because there are many NFL players who go on to lead successful lives and have all their wits about them. So I think that what's being made about it is kind of misleading. Obviously, head injuries, and it's a huge issue, but I don't think it's as big a deal as people are making it out to be. Next up, Patriots. 19-0 is the talk. Not going to get into it right now because it's foolish, but it's fun to talk about. And we're not close enough to the football season yet. Talk to me in next month in August when there's really nothing going on, when it's like literally just the Red Sox. All the NBA rumors are done. I don't talk hockey, and the Red Sox are probably slipping out of the playoffs by this time unless something major happens, even internally. Fire Farrell. That's pretty much what I'm saying. But we'll get into the 19-0 talk, but it's on the table. I think it was USA Today or one of these sports publications predicted the Patriots to go 16-0. Not out of the table, but we're a little far out to start discussing this. And so that's it for the sports part. Now on to a little story time. How I saved a life at Target. I mentioned it earlier. So yesterday, this guy spoke very poor English. You know, he's maybe like Greek or Italian or something like that. And he was a gentleman probably in his 60s. And he went up to me and he goes, do you know where the bike helmet is? And I go, hold on, sir. And we have this little device that tells us where everything in the store is. So I look it up, bike helmet, and he goes, aisle E26. I take the man. I tell him where to go, but he wasn't taking it. He was like, I want you to lead me. So I led him there. I went down and up the aisle, and I showed him. And I said, hey, sir, here are the bike helmets. And he said to me, I would have never found it without you. And you know what that does for a man? When you hear, what if I wasn't there, and no one was there to help him, and he couldn't find the bike helmet? So he left, and you know what? Maybe he didn't have his car, and he rode his bike here. And what if he had fallen and suffered a head injury that caused CTE? What then? What now? What if that man turned into a vegetable from falling off a bike and hit his head without having a helmet because I wasn't there to show him where the helmets were? That's why they say not all heroes wear capes, but this really is that moment where I was able to impact a man's life. I was able to possibly save a life. I probably saved a life. What if he was buying it for his kid or his grandkid, and that little kid learned how to ride a bike, and they fell down? They need that helmet, or else bad things are happening. So that just shows how working at Target can save lives. Second story. There was this man, and he was speaking Spanish on the phone. I don't want to say I'm a Spanish savant, but I'm kind of a Spanish savant. 5 on the AP exam. Just immense knowledge about Spanish in my brain. So I go, and the man's talking, and he said, and I heard him say in Spanish, like, oh, it's only in English. Solo está en inglés. And the guy's like, oh, no, what am I going to do? So I ask him if he needs a judo that's helping Spanish. And he says to me, yeah, I'm looking for Dora la Exploradora. And I go, all right, that means Dora the Explorer. So I go on my device. I said, do you want a toy, a juguete? Do you want a doll, a muñeca? And he goes, anything. And I look and I say we don't have it. And even though I couldn't find Dora la Exploradora for him, what I was able to do, I was able to save him time. What if he had spent another 15, 20, 30 minutes looking for that toy? And what if this man was a cop? What if he was a fireman? What if he was a doctor? What if this man saved lives for a living, and his time literally saved lives? My saving him time allowed him to save the world. So another way people at Target can save money. Can't save lives. You save money shopping at Target. You save lives by working at Target. So that's all I have for this podcast. Again, huge shout out. So excited to be a part of Guy Boston Sports. I will also be uploading on YouTube and doing a lot more work with them. So keep your eyes open. Check out the website. Follow everyone on Twitter. Thank you to Evan Singleton for getting me on board and making this really cool picture background for the YouTube. Has everything I want. Even says hosted by Joe Spinoza. I'm pretty bad with all this stuff, so thank you to him for getting me all set up, being patient as I learn the ropes of uploading on the website and getting everything ready. So just really excited to be a part of this. Look out for more podcasts coming out. And again, thank you and have a great day.